Welcome to Wednesdays with WGST, Women's Intersexuality Studies here at Longwood University. This is our last WGST event of the semester. If you have any ideas or topics or things that you want to pitch for next year's WGST Wednesday talks, please feel free pitch us something. We're open to all ideas, from panels to discussions to interactives, students, faculty, staff. We're open to whoever has a good idea and wants to share it. That's what we're here to help with. I'm Dr. Wagner, co-director of WGST, along with Drs. Melissa Kravitz here. So we have for you today some coffee and tea, and we have some brownies and some cookies. So please don't be stingy. Like, go for it. Go for it, right? So take cookies and brownies to your heart's content. So what we have today is we have our fine panel here. It is on queer communication studies, particularly queer communication research and archive research. And so we have a student team here to present to you what they did in their independent study this semester, which was titled Queer Communication Research, right? And they each took their own lens that really inspired them from their experience, their transformative experience, mind you, during their Brown Place and Voice last summer. And they just desperately wanted to continue their work and have been in my office 24/7 since. RPs. No. RP's part. No, they have been wonderful. They have been dedicated students. It was a pleasure to work with them. It really was, to see their ideas and what inspires them, and to see that be so dedicated to this work. It has been quite inspiring getting to mentor them. And so what we're going to do is I'll kind of write over a little bit. Here's kind of what we did specifically, and then I'm going to let the majority of it be, here's what they did. Because they're going to tell you their lenses and what cool things that they found. So first, that we have here, this is Scoot Group. We're part of Scoot Group. They were students who just scooted around San Francisco on their off time. And so they just affectionately became known as Scoot Group. They are, here's my backwards order of my brain. So we've got Austin Burnett, Alyssa Inzeo, Anna Inzeo, and Liv Price. And they did some research online digital archives. They did basically got out to San Francisco to the GLB's and the Historical Museum and the San Francisco Public Library, got their hands on a bunch of really cool stuff that they're going to talk about today. So kind of the lens of what they're looking at is they're looking at this through archival research and Foucault's discourse, specifically on how these items, kind of archival work, can provide a kind of, here's how we look at history. Here's how we can come up with our stories. Here's the discourse, what we, how we understand knowledge, how we understand the world, how we understand history a little bit. And so that was the real quick version of Foucault. But that's the kind of lens that they're coming from. So we did the work with that. And then in order to get there, we had a process where they came up with the research questions. What inspired them about San Francisco? What are you kind of thinking about broadly? Let's narrow it down. They did a literature review, a pretty decently extensive literature review, really. And then they discovered their gaps. Here's what's missing. Here's what I want to go discover. Here's what I want to go see. And so what we did was we got over to the UC Berkeley Online Digital Library archives and got into the GLBT Historical Archives, which were in the basement of a building that you never would have known was there. Then we got into the San Francisco Public Library's James C. Cornell LGBTQ+ collection. After they did their lists, after they did that, then they analyzed it, and that's what they're here to tell you about today. Cool? Let's hear from what we got. And you're not in order this way either. Are you? Are you? Okay, here we go. So here are our topics. So we have Liv, who's going to cover beat or lesbian writers of the beat movement. Anna's going to cover the courses, so gay men's courses, specifically LGBTQ Asylum project, the asylum with LGBTQ courses. We're going to Alyssa and then Harvey here. Harvey is going, Austin is going to cover the legacy of Harvey, and how we think of the world today. and then we'll open it up to some questions. All right, let's do it.
Okay.
Do you have the clicker for a chance? That's what I was talking about. Oh, okay. But you go like this, and I'll go to your next one.
Well, can I get up and point then? I'm going to try to point. It's a very large screen, but I have a map that'll be on there to kind of explain my point. So my niche is lesbian writers in the beat movement. I chose this because I have a very deep connection to the queer community, and I'm an English secondary education major. I have a very large love for literature, so I went to Wagner. I was like, I want to incorporate the queer community with literature and art and those things. So how do I do that? And she was like, I have like this concept for you, and I fell in love with it. I love this, and I plan on like potentially like researching this after even this class ends, because I love it. I found passion in it. So yeah. So this, I'm gonna get up after I do my spiel. But that is a map of North Beach, which is a district in San Francisco. San Francisco was the hub of the literary movement, the Beats movement in the 1950s. And the movement focused on challenging traditional American norms, which was very funny because the Beat movement was a boys' club. You didn't see many female writers in there. But research has noted that it identified women as a large part of the Beat movement, but there wasn't that big of an intersection between lesbian writers in the movement as well. So North Beach was a lesbian haven and the center of the Beat movement at the same time. So since that is happening, why isn't there this intersection? Why aren't there that many lesbian writers being talked about in the Beat movement? So there was Tommy's Place, which was a lesbian bar. Yeah, so I get that, y'all. So this is Tommy Basu, who founded Tommy's Place, which was a lesbian bar, in North Beach, which was located across which I believe was located across from City Lights bookstore. Here we go. To take out the picture, I'm so sorry. That beautiful.
So they're standing.
Yeah, they're standing right across from City Lights bookstore. So, and Vesuvio Cafe, and the apartments of where the Beat writers lived and wrote in within that block. So while I didn't find many specifically out queer women writers, this could be because it is the 1950s and being gay was illegal. But identity and the labels people use could have just been different. So there's like butch, which is instead of lesbian, and it associates with what it meant to identify as lesbian, and it could be impacted because of gender. And there were also Beat writers who were in touch with their femininity and androgyny. So who were those people? Ruth Weiss was a big one. She was an out lesbian Beat writer, and she was a huge woman rights activist. And then there was also Diane DePrima, and she wasn't specifically out. She didn't label herself, but it was noted that she did experience with some queer relationships sexually. And it is also clear, like, through her work that even though she engaged with kind of like queer culture, she didn't outright say, this is my sexuality, this is my identity. And then I also looked at the Beat Museum, and that houses some of both of their works. There is a women's writer section that holds some of both of their things. And then there's also at the UC Berkeley Bancroft Library Archives, there's a bunch of Ruth Weiss's things. Can you go back, Alex? Yeah. So in the top right corner, that is Ruth's typewriter that was found there. So overall, even though it wasn't directly stated that lesbian writers were incredibly apparent in the Beat scene. North Beach specifically, the lesbian influence had a very large impact on the beat movement due to the fact that they were both existed and started to make a rise in the North Beach district at the same time. And I'm going to plug that map again so I can show you guys like how like close they were. I'm going to jump around. So right here we got City Lights, right? And then here is Specs 12 Adler, which was connected to Tommy's place. There was like a stairway, kind of like back entrance sort of situation going on. So that's right there. And then they go up to Broadway, where the Beat Museum, that is now there's the Beat Museum. That was personally there, obviously, during the 1950s. And then near where it says Big Al's Smoke Shop was where Allen Ginsberg wrote How and where a lot of the writers wrote. So like you can see like how they are all together like within the same block. But like there is an intersection now come. So yeah. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to show you guys the map to like truly explain like they are so close together. Like it's all happening within the same place. So yeah. I think that's me. I'm done. Yeah.
Okay. So on our first Broad experience, we learned about the gay men's choruses. We were immersed into queer culture as we learned about who had a voice in San Francisco in marginalized communities, and we had a specific focus on the queer community. And through learning this, we learned that the queer community was often silenced and ignored. They didn't really get to say what was going on. This is why the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus really stood out to me. I had prior knowledge of the chorus from Dr. Shatker's class, and I was really interested in it. So when I learned that we were going to be able to speak to the stakeholders and go to a rehearsal, I was thrilled. It was one of the things that I was the most excited for when we were going, especially because they are a group of people who are in this minority who is often silenced to form the community, and they are forcing themselves to be heard through song to educate people on topics that pertain to the community. So when we were presented with the opportunity to go back to San Francisco, we each had to choose our niche, and I obviously chose the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, but more specifically, I chose how the AIDS epidemic impacted the chorus and how they used their voice to respond to the AIDS epidemic. A little background to the AIDS epidemic was it was really brutal. There was a lot of negative stigma surrounding queer individuals that led to discrimination and violence. A lot of people would call it gay cancer and say that gay men deserve to have AIDS because they love somebody of the same sex. It was just really disgusting. So since it was affecting the majority of gay men, people weren't really researching AIDS and trying to figure out ways to prevent it or cure it or ways to stop the spread. They didn't put any of their time, money, efforts into research to help it because although it was killing hundreds of thousands of people, they were mostly gay men, so they didn't really care. This led to the formation of many different activist groups. ACT UP was one of them. And these activist groups fought for better health care and more visibility and awareness. And since AIDS was so foreign, they wanted to fund for more research opportunities so they knew how to prevent AIDS, how to cure it, how it spreads, all the information regarding AIDS. There is no actual cure, but at the time they wanted a cure. So in response to AIDS, the queer community did grow stronger together. They formed this collective identity where they could all be supported and heard in this really dark time. So the chorus fits into all this because they were often overlooked in history regarding the AIDS epidemic because of the inherently queer name in their title. Queer history is often ignored and overlooked. So different activist organizations that aren't inherently queer but were fighting on behalf of queer individuals, they are more so remembered than the gay men's choruses. But the chorus did use AIDS as a rallying point, and many of their members did unfortunately die due to AIDS, which led to many different memorials and tributes. But they didn't just stop there. They decided that they had to use their deaths for a purpose. They used their deaths to educate people and to teach everybody about what happened with the AIDS epidemic and how serious it was and that it needs to be taken seriously. So the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus became a space for advocacy as well as community and they help to bring attention to the epidemic while educating people by using their platform. They participated in many fundraising opportunities and even hosted concerts and performances that incorporated themes of love, loss, and resilience to demonstrate that they can grow stronger from this and that they deserve to be heard. And through these concerts, all of the proceeds did go to support research in the AIDS epidemic and treatment for people who were affected with AIDS. And this influenced the chorus's mission of importance of community support and activism in the face of adversity. And to relate this back to Farmville, I'm more so going to focus on the community aspect than the AIDS aspect. There are many different community groups here in Farmville, and they make everybody's day-to-day life easier if they are on them due to found family that they have. Farmville Pride is a wonderful example of this, and everybody should go to at least, 10 meetings with them. But they do provide a space for voices to be heard and allow people to be themselves, just as the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus did. And they just provide support here in Farmville. So, yeah, let's eat. Sorry, I didn't jump around like Liv. I just chose my favorite pictures.
Okay, so I did the LGBTQ Asylum project and immigration. So last summer on our Rob experience, we learned about the LGBT Asylum project, and during this experience, I actually didn't really know what went into immigration. Like, I knew it was a process and it took time, money, and commitment, but I genuinely did not know that, like, if you applied, they could reject you for whatever reason they see fit. I thought it was more of a, if I want to, I can apply and I can come. But as I learned about it and spoke to stakeholders and heard different stories, I realized that it wasn't like that at all, actually. But for those of you who are unaware of what the LGBT Asylum Project is, it's a nonprofit organization that's located in San Francisco, California, and it's dedicated to providing accessible legal representation for LGBT asylum seekers who are fleeing persecution due to their sexual identity, gender identity, and/or HIV status. It is important to note that in order to apply for the asylum, you have to be in the United States on a temporary visa. You can't apply from the country you're trying to flee. So it does have a little bit of a gap for health issues, but it's a great organization. So the people who are seeking asylum, they arrive to the United States with little to nothing. Like, they come here with more horror stories about what they've been through than personal belongings. So because of their queer identities, they're seen as criminals in their home countries, even though no crime has been committed. They are just ostracized, and they're not viewed as people. They're just disgraceful in the name of their home countries. So the refugees are treated terribly by their government, their countrymen, even their friends and families, because they all share the same belief that queer people they shouldn't exist. So many countries exile anyone who is even rumored to be queer. So instead of living in fear, the refugees try to leave their home country so they can find somewhere safe, somewhere they don't have to hide, somewhere they can be themselves, and somewhere that truly accepts them for who they are. So seeing San Francisco and being immersed in that queer culture, I can truly say that if they can get there, and it isn't if they, because truly not, you really don't know. But if they can get there, they have found a perfect place to feel accepted, and they're coming to the right place to look for a community. So after my initial trip to San Francisco, I learned so many positive things, but all I could think about was we need to do more, because no matter what I learned about, there was always something on the back burner that was not solved, not fixed, not talked about, and brought to light. So when I learned about this and what the queer community was going through, we progressed forward in so many ways, but we're still progressing backwards, and especially because of the state of the current political climate. So my niche originally started with the LGBT Asylum Project in its entirety, but as I dug into the research, I did change my direction. Every idea I came up with that had to do directly with the Asylum Project seemed to already be covered in some aspect, and I wanted to pinpoint something that wasn't really brought to light that often. So I went into the direction of attempting to compare the different immigration processes under Trump's America to a different American outlook. But as I was looking at old cases and stories and victories, I realized that it was a hard truth, but immigrants have never really had a fair shot, no matter who the president is, no matter what's going on in America.
it didn't matter what anyone's beliefs were. Case after case, everything that I reviewed ended with the same result. Everyone that was seeking asylum in fear of persecution was denied for the same reasons that they were seeking asylum in the first place. But the wording is, well, the court cases that I looked at, it was just like oblivious and obvious enough that nobody could pinpoint it as targeted. So there was nothing that could be done. So like if someone was seeking asylum because of their sexual orientation, the United States court system would look for ways to prove the refugee was lying about the state of danger they were in, or if they were claiming, because the people who were seeking asylum knew what their gender identity was, but the United States court system wanted them to be lying, so they said it was a claim of taking it seriously. So they would just prove they were faking in any way possible. And the courts, they really did want these people to be liars more than they wanted to help them find safety. But one of the main reasons refugees were denied asylum was because of their HIV status. If an individual had AIDS, they were automatically denied. And there was little to no reasoning that could be done. The refugees were basically like deemed out of luck by the court system and then sent back to their home countries in more danger than before. Because many of these countries were persecuting individuals if they found out they're HIV positive. So the United States court system failed and continues to fail so many individuals who just want to move out of somewhere where they're living in constant fear, trying to find somewhere to be safe. And I know like it's a lot of information to take one time, and if it doesn't directly pertain to you, it's hard to really understand where everything's coming from. So Prince Edward in general is a very small conservative town, and we're often not in the same room as people who agree with us about politics. And Ferndale is a blue dot, so you will find people who have the same views of you if you share these views. But we're not always in a shared space people with the same beliefs as ours. And with the state of the current political climate and Trump's stance on immigration, I've heard a lot of negative comments, thoughts, and opinions. And one of the statements I hear a lot is like, why don't undocumented immigrants do it the right way? Well, if there even is an ethical right way, it's an expensive, time-consuming journey, and it doesn't end with a guaranteed pass to come to America. The individuals risk everything, knowing that there's a possibility they'll just get sent right back to where they're fleeing. And they show the utmost amount of bravery, and they deserve to live somewhere they feel safe. So the next time we hear someone talking negatively and spewing hate, I think it's important for us to use our voice and be there for the undocumented immigrants who are unable to speak out for themselves. Because if a small town's good for anything, it's a sense of community. And I think as a small town with a strong community, it's our job to be there for everyone who needs support.
It's me. Then.
So I did Clunky Milk as my explore in San Francisco. But I will jump back to the first time we were in San Francisco in June. We did a lot of work leading up to our time in Tila. The Harvey Milk's story was one that really stuck out to me at that time. And so then traveling to San Francisco and seeing his camera shop and seeing things about him in museums and touring City Hall and seeing where she was ultimately assassinated really resonated with me at that time. And it encouraged me to come home and want to learn more. And so this opportunity, Dr. Wagner, was the perfect chance for me to learn more. And also return back to San Francisco and just find things that I didn't have the time and chance to find in first time in there. To be the something about this book that I like. There is at the mayor's office, the book jet like that. That is Candlelit Ben Jonathan Travis City Hall, the man made assassinated. This camera store, that's him. Those are 10 pictures on the bottom. Was a rally she led against them. A very homophobic initiative, like send the speak Marina, and then killed one of his romantic partner shots. So I could So, just a little bit of background about Harvey Milk. He was the first openly gay man to be elected to public office in California. That was just really big deal at the time. I think it would still be a big deal now, especially with the current political climate. He moved to San Francisco in 1972 and opened his camera store. He ran for supervisor twice, then ran for state assembly, lost all 3 of his first campaigns, and then finally won November 8th, 1977, a spot on the board of supervisors. Pretty much immediately after his election, he received an insane amount of death threats, an insane amount of hate mail. I went through hundreds of letters of hate mail while we were in San Francisco. One of them is the bottom right. it was absurd things that people were both saying, even on the outside of the lips. It was heartbreaking. And so with this knowledge that he was a public enemy for a lot of people, he did record 3 audio tapes, called them his takes tapes. They were saying in the event of his assassination. Well, I'll talk more about this later. But that was a big reason why I wanted to go back and research more about him. So he had been elected in 1977. In 1978, one of his co-supervisors, Dan White, resigned from his position. He and Harvey had some tension between them over previous votes on the board of supervisors, and Harvey was very close with the mayor at the time. So Dan White resigned. Less than 10 days later, he tried to withdraw his resignation, and the mayor wasn't sure if he was going to honor that withdrawal. So on November 27th, 1978, about 30 minutes before the press conference where the mayor would announce who would be getting Dan White's spot with board of supervisors, Dan White snuck into City Hall through the basement to bypass metal detectors and shot Mayor Muscovy in his office 4 times. He immediately left the mayor's office after the mayor was dead, walks down the hall to Harvey Milk's office, pulled him into a side office, blocked Harvey Milk from the doorway, shot him once in the elbow, twice in the chest. And I read in the coroner's report those first 3 bullets would actually kill Harvey Milk. He fell in, and Dan White shot him in the head from across the room, which ultimately killed him, and then shot him once more at close range in the skull. And then the news broke. It was heartbreaking time for San Francisco to lose somebody that was such an outspoken representative of the queer community, especially to an act of violence by somebody else that had been elected. And so that night, tens of thousands of silent, peaceful protesters marched from his camera store in the Castro neighborhood down to the steps of City Hall. That's about 2 miles, so it's from this building all the way to the streets. Down the road, it's about the same distance. It was candlelit vigil. There is a picture of the blood. And that was just, for a lot of people in the community who were terrified of what was to come, that was a huge moment of this community is a lot larger than we thought and a lot more unified than they thought. And it also confirmed that it was a peaceful protest and that people were angry, but they weren't going to be, their feelings could not be discounted because of the way they portrayed them. Then that makes sense. And so on the steps of City Hall, the Gay Men's Chorus gave the first public performance in honor of Harvey Milk, and so that's a really cool time. But that was the first time I'm in public. So Dan White was charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances because it was elected officials. There were 2 murders, and because it was in an attempt to interrupt their political duties. So if he had been convicted, he would have faced the death penalty. He was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 7 years in prison, which is the lightest possible sentence that he could have convicted. He served 5 of those years and then 2 on probation and then killed himself 2 years later. And there was a lot of anger from the community, and a lot of people really believed that he just got away with murder. And that kind of ignited a spark in the community. The judges, the courts, they aren't always on our side. Not everybody's on our side, so we need to find strength in our community people on our side and really lean on them and not just assume that the government's going to do it for us. And so I think that it fostered a greater sense of community even in the face of tragedy. I mean, it was a deliberate act of violence. It was horrible. And so there's this suit that he was assassinated in. You can see blood on the collar and on the sleeve. Kind of looks like shadows, but it's even. In the archives, I actually found this handkerchief that was in his pocket, and I held it. It was like things like seeing his suit, holding the handkerchief. Those in the top right, those in letters that were in his pocket, you can see the bullet holes. They're holding things like that. Just it makes it so much more complete. It's something that you can't get out of textbook. It's not something you get on computer screens. I cannot express just how impactful traveling San Francisco and seeing all of these things in person is actually. And then I would let the back to the audio tapes, is in case tapes. So there is a museum. It's called a LGBT Historical Society Museum, something like that. And they have his suit on display, and then a few placards about him. And then they also have a button that you press it, plays about 2 minutes of one of his audio tapes. And I can't listen to it without crying every time. There's a picture later in the presentation. I found the audio tape in the archives. And one of my favorite quotes from it is, Harvey said, "I fail to realize that person who stands for what I stand for, an activist, a gay activist, becomes a target or the potential target for someone who's insecure, terrified, afraid, or very disturbed themselves." And I think that his acknowledgement of what he's doing is going to anger people. He knows he is going to face these. He knew what he was doing was dangerous. He knew that he was probably going to die. And continuing to do it for the people he represented is just that act of selflessness is something that I feel like we lack today in politics. And to know that it once existed gives me confidence that it can exist again. And I know that right now a lot of people are nervous about the state of the federal government and what is happening, and nobody quite knows exactly what can happen and like who's checking that everything that's happening is allowed. And so I think that leaning into politicians that have acted in selfless ways and have acted for the good of the people is an important thing to remember. Sorry, y'all, I feel like I'm rambling. And the thing that right now we see a lot of people caring about politics in a much less passive way than we're used to. And I think it starts with research like this. I think that caring about politics, you have to know about it. You have to know what's happened. You have to know what's happening currently. And there's something about standing in a museum and hearing this man who's dead, who was shot, hearing it and looking at his suit and knowing what he stood for, just, it has an impact that, like I said, you can't get from a computer screen. You can't necessarily get from a professor lecturing or somebody sitting up here telling you about it. And I think that, like, we all have a duty to go out and learn about what we care about and learn about it in really concrete ways, so that we can make a change that we want to see, whatever that change be. And I can't express how much this type of research meant to me, and like how much this has helped me grow as a person and as an activist and a feminist and like someone that just wants things to be better for people. So thank you. And be it.
Right, girl. You went that without Ben.
Oh, I was here out a little bit when Austin was speaking.
Every time she's in class, sometimes way back at the shops, you'll see so much of tears. The rest think about her. I get the man. She's all right. So we wanted to open it up to some questions, and I'll get us started, just to kind of get that ball rolling, and then you'll pick some questions for real. So the question that we kind of came up with was, we went to San Francisco for the broad class. We went to San Francisco for this. Why San Francisco? To do this word.
I'll start. Sorry, I know I just talked for a long time. But I love this question because, like, in very simple terms, I love San Francisco because everybody minds their business. There's such a tolerance for self-expression there that, like, you cannot find. That I have not found in a place like Fondo or in, like, the small town. And, like, everybody truly does mind their business, and they mind their business, and they celebrate, like, self-expression, and that is just such a unique part of San Francisco that San Francisco also has such a rich, clear history that it really did feel like the best place to conduct this type of research would be. And to add to Austin, so everyone minding their business. Every time you round the corner, you're in a different area of San Francisco that is so vastly different from where you just came. So you can come from, like, the Tenderloin, where people often describe it as the bad part of San Francisco, but the community there is just as strong as the community in the Castro and the community in the market. It's the community all throughout San Francisco is tight-knit, even if they're not directly under one another. I think with like my topic also in particular, the kind of like being open, I can't speak, openly being queer kind of started to become a thing in San Francisco in like the 1920s and 1930s. So I think with like the beat movement and my hands are so clammy, you can see all those. Sorry. Being a lesbian writer, it started happening in the 1950s. That's only like 30 years after like everyone started kind of celebrating being queer. So I don't know. I think that definitely the queer history in San Francisco made it kind of a place that we all connected with, especially on that first trip. So.
I think so. Sorry, but somebody also explained specifically the Tenderloin is a place for a lot of people that would typically be like on a lower in like social standing. Like there's a lot of prostitutes, there's a lot of unhoused people, there's a lot of people struggling with addiction that live in the Tenderloin. And I think it's true for all of San Francisco that a lot of people go there like as this safe haven of like looking for community to sit into. And so people that are already there established, like, welcome people with open arms because there's this understanding that, like, people are probably coming because they don't have anywhere else to go. Or they're coming from South Side so they can't go back to home.
So, yeah. To add on that, I've never been to a place where I felt like I could truly be myself without judgment. And that kind of goes into with, like, they don't, like, what did you say? Like, they don't mind, like, they don't, what's, like, the type? They just mind their business because especially like with things that I've experienced, people never not mind their business. So it was nice to kind of go to a place where I could like be myself and feel not judged. Sorry, my voice is shaky, but yeah.
And I know for me personally, my family has this huge expression of, oh, you need to be safe. But not one time in either of the times I went to San Francisco did I ever feel unsafe, no matter what area I was. It's such a welcoming community, and I think it's very open to everyone.
Thank you for mentioning. Well, thanks for having them both with. You're like, yeah. So you all know my experience that in my field here, like partying up in the chorus. So I was wondering between Ella and Austin, there's not much time that overlaps between the chorus forming. Harvey Milk is so bad, but it's a pretty short period of time. Harvey Milk's campaign manager in Cronenberg said once that he knew about the chorus, but he never got to see them sing. I was just wondering if everyone in the town any more connections between the two, between Cardinal and Boris?
The only connection I found was them doing the concert at the city hall. Still, they got them. I remember the first time we were in San Francisco and I had a chance to talk to some of the members of the chorus. I sat waiting for 30 minutes to talk to this one particularly. I assumed that he was old enough to have been in the swimming cartoon that had, and he was one of the original members. And I asked him, I said, what was it like what was that like? I was fascinated with it at the time, and I just wanted to talk to somebody that, like, wasn't a Google papa, you know? I guess to answer your question, he just talked about the same the steps of City Hall, but he also really emphasized that sense of community and how, I think he thought that was a really important start for the public performances, and how that really set the tone of what they stood for about the day and night. Yeah. It was really interesting to talk to somebody that did that.
That was just the same gentleman. I don't think it was the same gentleman, because the year prior, so the year before you all went, we talked to one of the OG members that they had pulled over to talk to us, right? And I remember, do you all remember this in the talking about being part of his campaign? Yeah, CCON. About rape, about now treat me. I'm going to minute, what do you write on my YouTube there? Yeah, he wasn't there. He was there, but he was like had no like
Yes, that is. Well, two things. One's kind of quick. I'm curious about these pictures. So you can tell me this is Harry Milk's, flyer. Something. Part of the letters and where that top link is. Real question I want it is
you guys came back all fired up to do astrobeats. What would you say it takes to get students fired up about doing extra work? Doing, oh my right, that's your right. What's the criteria? What's the criteria for you? How did it pass us? Is it the same or different? I'd love to hear what you.
So for me, I didn't really have much background in queer culture. My family is very much hush hush about it. Like, they don't mind gay people, but they don't really broadcast it on the news or anything. So when I went there, I was really able to see people who cared about everybody, regardless of what the reason was. And it really unlocked a passion for me that I didn't know that I had. I didn't know I cared so deeply about things that affect me and things that don't affect me. But seeing it and seeing everyone's passion for the same topic, and while we were there, we did not know each other. But we became very close very fast, and it was through our united passion for the same research. So when we came back, we didn't want the research to end. Like, it sounds dumb, but like, it's as simple as that. Like, I did not want to stop learning about it. I did not want to stop seeing what was going on. I wanted the history and I wanted it uncensored, and I knew the only way to get the uncensored version was to find it myself. Because you can learn about it in class, you can learn about it even on colleges. It's still censored in some capacity because it's biased through whatever professors taught me about its lens. So for me, I really wanted to see it through my own lens and see how I could connect it to what I actually find previously. So it sounds like for you, it's being in a location, freedom to research, and find the co-work among gifts. Me. Yeah. You go, Austin. Okay, you can go. For me, well, there's kind of like two parts to it. One, I talked about all in my application for the first Brock experience. I had never left the East Coast. I lived in a town kind of like Frontville. It's there's not how people have the same political ideas as we. And other than that, I did like data banks. So I like did not get any Tallahassee and Climbdale. And so going to San Francisco and not being like kind of the other end of the spectrum was fascinating to me. And so I just was like, I like San Francisco and I don't like bored anything I still know about San Francisco ever. I'm like, but also I have a younger sister at home, and she's 17. She's gonna be one vote soon. I've got shares that mostly align with my political standing, but nobody in my house kind of can back that up with like stats about why we should feel this way. And my sister was like, in the last year, she said some questionable things that we had to have like some tough talks about. And I was going into these with this mentality of, well, you should agree with me because I'm morally right. And like what I'm saying is right, and you should also believe that's right. And I kind of like I discovered that wasn't enough to like base my beliefs on. And I needed to be able to tell her, like, people are being killed so they get. People are being killed for having gays. People, like, there's real, at least mine, and there are real reasons that I feel this way, and I need to be able to tell her and give her those examples so she can form her good feelings, but I don't want her judgment to be clouded by sanitized skin color, if that makes sense. And so I'm doing a lot of for my sister as I'm like future generations that I don't know what direction this country's heading in. And I think that preserving history like this is so important. And being able to share that with people and not just base your opinion spin and, well, that's what I think, and you should identify. So the chest, trials and say, okay, we need that first. Yes, almost a wall of pyramids. Need to, yes. Good. So for me, from a very young age, I knew that I did not agree with anything that my family ever said, not once. It's Trump everything over there. But being able to leave them, even if it's just 45 minutes away and like come here, it was freeing, and being able to like sign up for the Brock experience and realize it's something that I'm interested in and want to study, and knowing that they don't like it in the slightest. That was what really drove me to go. But like once I was there, I was just so passionate about everything I was learning. And I remember on the last day when we were about to leave, I was distraught. I did not want to stop my research. I didn't want to leave San Francisco. And I knew that if I was leaving, I still wanted to continue learning, because everything that I was learning it just made so much sense for everything that I had grown up believing in. I wasn't getting that side from my family. I was hearing all these harmful things from them, but it was just freeing for me.
I think, sorry. I think with me personally, again, like kind of like what I said earlier with like not being able to like be who I was. And I grew up in a household that was very like accepting of all identities, and you could be whatever, you like be who you want to be, and like we're very whatever you want to do, we gotcha. But it was until I came to Longwood that I could like be who I wanted without judgment, or like kind of like almost remake myself to be who I wanted myself to be, and I could be my true self. And I say that like all the time. I say like I'm a completely different person than who I was in high school because I didn't have as many restrictions on me. But when I found out that there was going to be a queer rock experience, and not even that like we were going to San Francisco, but there was just a queer class where we could learn about different perspectives and other queer people's stories, because the only stories that I had really heard, queer stories, was myself. So I was like, I want to hear about like other people and how they feel, because like, I don't know, just to kind of learn not every single queer person is the same person. Like, so I thought that going to San Francisco would be the best for me. And I'm a changed person after that trip. I feel like I can't even explain. But with that trip, it was the way that it was like structured. I wanted to learn more because we had like so many different concepts going on, and we kind of like, we went into it a little bit, but it was more of like, I have this one topic that I really want to focus on, and I really want to learn more about it. And the only way I can get into it more is if I go. I mean, I did go on the trip. I didn't go to San Francisco this time because I had other things going on. But taking another class to dive into what I was passionate about and what I really wanted to learn about was something that really called to me. So I think that it really just depends on, going back to your question of why do kids want to research more? It's just like making sure that they truly connect with a topic that they're curious about, passionate about, all of those things. So, I mean, it really depends on the student, but like, I mean, we connected with each other that like, it's like the second day, it was like an instant. It was instant, like how that worked. So, I mean, Anna, Alyssa, and I lived on the same hall freshman year. But other than that, I didn't know Austin at all. So, again, I think that with like the cohort, the passion, the curiosity, I think that's a huge thing. And also the professors, of course. Yes. They're the professors, like, and like the fellows that went with us, for sure.
For each like intense justifiers for experiential, but the experience, and I'm going to go there with each of you the lecture starting soon.
Yeah, we really did kind of. It takes out so much that I'm living there right now.
Since I don't, but it expressed how much that brand experience changed.
And I wish that it was transformative. Like it really formless.
Yeah, I like when I first learned about park experiences, I read all the stuff about it's transformative, and like I'm just like, I mean, this is cheating. Like I swear I was like this somewhere, and then I learned about it. I said about like this cheating work. It really did change my mind. Like when I first learned that I had to go on one, I was kind of like really like this is just wired. Like this is so pointless, but it's easily the best decision that I did. Oh, it was like
yeah. Like awesome.
Do you want, so we are at time.
wait, there's an
Oh, yeah.
sorry. It's like, yeah. I
can't wait, and I am my niece, Miss Bevan, to split my. Oh, what's next? You're going to special money. You know, I'm like, yeah. Well, we haven't really discussed that.
Yeah.
In terms of what we're talking about today now. I'll try to sneak into my sabbatical proposal. We all not. I think I was just sneaking in the San Francisco. Yeah, we were. I shared you in a quiet group. By sneaking, we mean, possibly once a day, we ask her if she has worked before. Really, like, quiet and really quiet.
Super quiet.
Like actually, like, we don't talk. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we never think. We honestly wouldn't even tell them. We just get us on the cable car and we'll just put us on the cable for like, a scooter. You won't even know we're there type. No, like, then let's sneak.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that is true.
That is so true, yeah.
Because now that we're friends, like, like I said, we didn't know each other before, but now we've got involved in a lot of different things on campus. Like the Reconstructive Justice Club just started, so we're all in that loud and proud. And then also the lavender ceremony, we're all on the student committee for that. Probably will be next year. And then probably just like more research. Like I just want to learn everything there is to learn. And like kind of that, like a lot of the opportunities could be have involved with, we won't happen. Like I'm not gonna have that once I graduate. Like my like work isn't gonna be like, hey, you wanna go on a rock experience? Like that's not like a thing in the real world. We still grad school. So it was the good. Put a thought in my head. Don't tap me with the good. So all right, so we want to thank you all for coming out. Please take brownies, take cookies, like stuff them in your pockets, and to go to town. Like as if you don't want to stick them in my pockets. Put shit in those niggas. Them to do pants. Isn't it an adoption? Yeah, it is. So thank you all for how again, and you all have ideas for Wednesdays with definitely students. Please, students, faculty, staff, everybody, like send us ideas. We are open to them. Thank you to our Spitwork pamphlets, and thank you all to everybody who came out. And if you want to stick around with the interest.